Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Liveship Trilogy by Hobb, which is, as it currently stands, is about like my third favorite trilogy of all time. I really loved it. It could have been number one and had a good shot at number one after the first book, because the first book is like one of my favorite books of all time. Um, the second book didn't really get really even close to being one of my favorite books of all time. I did still really like it. It's just like not to the standard that I would hold it as like among my favorite books of all time. The third book is like on the precipice of that, but unfortunately, it had a couple problems holding it back from being there. But I really love Ship of Magic, and even if I have some problems with the rest of the trilogy, I still absolutely love it. It is one of the best trilogies I have ever read, and well, to a lot of people, it is the best. But again, a lot of the problems I had kind of held it back a little bit. So without further ado, let's get right into it. And first of all, the characters, as you would like suppose in a Robin Hobb novel, because half the time what people do talk about with Robin Hobb is the character work, and that is really not even not even close to being butchered here. Because Farseer, one thing that I really loved in Farseer is her ability to like make you not really either agree with a character or just like not like a decision a character makes, because characters make stupid decisions in both Farseer and this. But one thing I really liked about Farseer is her ability to like make you completely disagree with a decision a character's making, or not disagree with it, but just think it's really stupid, but still completely empathize with them and understand what they're doing. And in this, that might be even better. Partly because while Farsi was first person and in one specific perspective, whereas this one just kind of goes through a bunch of different perspectives. But even for non-perspective characters, she is still able to keep that really strong. And I think Robin Hobb is like one of the strongest side character writers I've ever come across, which isn't something that I usually say for a lot of them, because like I think Joe Abercrombie is usually cited as a really good character writer, but I don't think he's very strong at writing side characters at all. I think he's written like some good ones, like maybe Artie in the original First Law trilogy, but outside of really that main cast and the perspective characters, and even some of the perspective characters are a bit weaker. I don't think very many of the side characters are really interesting. Um, like Bias maybe, but we're not here to talk about the First Law. Whereas in this trilogy, because of first of all the third person and multi POV thing, you get a lot more variety of perspectives, a lot more, a lot more diversity, and a lot more nuance to the story because of that. And it's still really impressive how she does that in Farseer, because in Farseer she still has, I think she has better side character writing than First Law. But in this, that's just taken up to another ante. And that's not to say that the only reason that she does a better job with making you understand a character and not necessarily agree with their decisions, or maybe think they have made really stupid decisions, is just because you have been in their head. Because there are side characters where you almost never go into their head. Some of them you just never do go into their head, and yet you understand them completely and the decisions they are trying to make, and they are some incredibly written characters. And the Valar Start is my main example for this. If you've read the trilogy, you know why I talk about him specifically. But I think the way that he is handled throughout the entire trilogy is like one of the most interesting aspects of it, and it's like a really good example of why what makes Robin Hobb a really good character writer, because he's not the character that you get the most focus on throughout the entire trilogy. But whenever you do get a focus on him, or whenever you do get something involving him, it's always really interesting, and he's always a really great character to read. And also thematically for the entire trilogy, he is an amazingly written character. So I think her side character writing in Farseer, and especially in this, I think in this it might even be better. Uh, that's kind of a debate. I kind of have to go through it in my head, because there's a lot of great side characters in Farseer. I mean, there might be more side characters in Farseer, but it kind of depends how you classify someone as a side character. So we'll see. But I just think she still continues to excel at that really well. And I think the character writing, like the POV writing, the way that she utilizes perspective is maybe the best I've ever seen it utilized in a trilogy ever. Because there's this one character, and he's he's very psychologically complex. If you've heard anything about this trilogy, or if you've read this trilogy, you know exactly who I'm talking about. He is one of the most brilliant characters I've ever read, both in intelligent and also in just like the way he is written. He is one of my favorite characters in this trilogy, and the way that she uses like the different perspectives, both his perspective and the characters surrounding him, to show his manipulation and a lot of different things going on with him, I think is just like one of the most brilliantly written things ever. And another thing she can do really, really well in this trilogy is make you absolutely loathe someone, because there are so many characters throughout this entire trilogy that I just despise. Um, but this is maybe the first time I've ever read a trilogy where there are characters that I despise, and I'm thinking about one character specifically, a character who I despise, but I can feel so completely for, and specifically in Ship of Destiny. Uh, that character, I did not expect to get really emotional throughout a lot of scenes involving him and tragic things happening for him, even though I hate him so much, but she writes that incredibly well. And there's also characters that, like, again, you completely disagree with a lot of decisions they're making, but you completely understand them as well. And but you also hate them, and you don't really feel much emotion for them outside of pure hatred. And she also has that, and she writes that really well. And she is able to write all like three specific characters who I have an absolute hatred for throughout this entire trilogy. That is just like a different emotional spectrum for all three of them. There's one that I just loathe, and if you've heard anything about the trilogy, again, you know who that is. I'm just going to say it's Kyle. Everyone hates Kyle. I don't really feel that much empathy for Kyle. I feel sorry for him, but I don't like get actively sad about it. Then there's another character in between who I hate, but I feel some empathy for, but I don't really, but I can kind of get emotionally attached to. But again, not really, but I do hate him. Maybe a little less than Kyle, but he is also really well written, and you can empathize with him quite a bit. And then the complete end of the spectrum is this third character who I hate by the end of the trilogy, and I don't really start out the trilogy hating him. As the trilogy progresses, I hate him more and more, and because of that, again, he's a perspective character, so you kind of know so much about him, and then by the end of the trilogy, you feel a lot of empathy for him, even though you despise this man. The way she handles that is, in my opinion, absolutely genius. And a lot of the different stuff is just the way that she. So, in Ship of Magic, it's maybe the fastest I've ever gotten attached to a group of characters ever. And Ship of Magic is also like maybe the fastest I've ever realized that something is going to become one of my favorite books of all time and one of my favorite series of all time, because the way that she introduces you to these characters and the conflict, and the central conflict that is kind of uniting them, and kind of not uniting is a bad term. Uniting is a very bad term for the trilogy. Uniting and the kind of central conflict that is bringing the story together. It's like the fastest I've ever gotten attached to characters and the conflict surrounding them. And I think and a lot of people will say that Ship of Magic has a really slow start. I completely disagree. I think Ship of Magic has one of the best like first 300 pages to a novel I've ever read in my entire life. It is ridiculous how fast I've gotten invested in that. So and again, these incredibly complex characters that you're in the head of, and like it may be even trickier than Farseer to write the POV characters, because you get less time with each of them. And by the end of the trilogy, there's only really uh one character who I'm like, I wish we could have gotten more time with them throughout the trilogy. There are two characters that I wish we got more time with at the end of the book, but that's just more like I wanted the end of the book to be longer so that I could get more of them after this event that has happened. Two characters in particular. And she also does a really great job in Civil Magic for taking a character who, if any other author wrote them, or just someone just gave me the concept for them, I would think they would be incredibly boring. But in Ship of Magic, she's able to craft an incredible character arc for them, make them one of the most interesting characters I've ever read, make them one of my favorite characters I've ever read, and just make them just a brilliant character the whole way through. So that's great. So on the character front, I don't really have much to say. Robin Hobb might be the best character writer I've ever read. Uh, we'll see. I mean, she's in contention, that is for sure. I At this point, I don't even really know who else would be in contention. Abercrombie maybe, but even then, I think she's a better writer than him in terms of character wise, which is maybe a bit of a controversial opinion, but I stand by it. We'll see as I go on to the trilogy, but I just think everyone in this trilogy is written remarkably well. Uh, and there's if you compare this, I do prefer Farseer, but there's two things in this trilogy that I preferred. I prefer how she does it in this trilogy to Farseer, and those two things are plotting and theming. So first of all, I'll talk about the theming, and thematically, this might be my favorite series or just piece of fiction of all time. I think, especially if these two books specifically, because these are the only two I own physically, but I think thematically these two books and the trilogy as a whole are just it's just brilliant. It's just one of the best stories I've ever read that's really confronts you with a lot of, first of all, a lot of real world issues, a lot of different things that are going on. First of all, like there's um there's slavery, there is misogyny, patriarchy, a lot of different gender based issues, as well as sexual assault, which I think throughout the trilogy she handles really well. Uh, I do have some disappointments towards the end, but like those are somewhat minor. But thematically, this might be my favorite trilogy of all time because, first of all, she's able to tie an emotionality to the theming in a way that I think is just brilliant. Like she ties it to the characters' arcs as well and ties it to a lot of different things and is able to explore them in a really nuanced way and directly tackling a lot of things that are happening in the real world through the story without really feeling on the nose or preachy or anything like that. And the way the and like within the first 300 pages of this book, again, I think this is like maybe one of the best 300 pages into a book I've ever read. One of the only contenders I've ever read is Assassin's Quest, and Assassin's Quest is by the same author. So we'll see. And throughout in the first 300 pages of Ship of Magic, she is able to make me feel so strongly about the themes that she is exploring throughout the entire trilogy. Uh, feel so strongly about so much that is happening and in this world, and she is also able to use the magic of the world to kind of create a lot of visual representation, but specifically in Shiva Magic. Again, it feels like this is my favorite of the trilogy because this is one of my favorite books of all time. But the way that first of all, again, the way that she uses the magic isn't specifically like one immediately feel very kind of tied to the themes, but like it, the way that the magic is used to create a lot of the tension that does eventually lead to creating a lot of the themes in this book, I think is just brilliant. And there's a lot of reasons why I think this is thematically the best series I've ever read and the best piece of fiction I've ever experienced. I do think a lot. Do think this part of it I want to leave for people to discover on their own because I think it's so brilliant that me talking about it is kind of doing it a service. So most of me talking about the shit is going to do it a service, but I think most people should probably read it and actually see how brilliant it is for themselves. So I won't talk about this much longer. But I think throughout the entire trilogy, she tackles themes in a way that I've never really seen done before, if I have seen done before, not nearly as well as this. So yeah, I think that is like the main aspect in which it's head and shoulders above Farseer. Like Farseer, specifically, especially by the end, I really like the themes of Farseer. This one I just like that much more, and it's not really even close. It's like my second favorite like story thematically is probably not really even close to this. This is like leagues ahead, in my opinion. So yeah, I really love this trilogy for that specific aspect. And then after that, you have plotting, and I think the plotting of this trilogy is just brilliant. Robin Hobb isn't really known for her plotting because again, in Farseer specifically, she takes her time on a lot of stuff. It's a lot slower and stuff, and I really enjoy that. Ship of Magic is one of the best plotted books I've ever read, and I say that completely unironically because I hear a lot of people say Ship of Magic should be shorter or Ship of Magic is slow and boring, and I cannot disagree more because I think Ship of Magic is basically the perfect length that it should be, and Ship of Magic specifically is brilliant in a way that it builds up tension and maintains that tension throughout the entire book. Because in that specific way, the way that Ship of Magic builds up tension throughout the entire trilogy, and specifically towards the beginning, and makes you invested in that so early into the book and keeps that throughout the entire book. And like that's something that I kind of missed in the Mad Ship and Ship of Destiny, but I still really liked in those two books, but it's kind of lost. Chip Magic is more of a family drama, uh, but the way that it's plotted and the tension is maintained throughout the whole thing. And again, a lot of this is again tied to the characters because this is this and Farseer are very much character-driven stories. I would say Farseer is even more of a character-driven story than this. This is still very character-driven because a lot of the time, when a lot of what you love about this trilogy is going to tie back into your investment in the characters from the very beginning. So if you don't like Ship of Magic, I don't know if you will like the rest of the trilogy. That being said, I feel like the outlier, whereas I like Ship of Magic like distinctly more than the other two books, and I've seen a lot of people like Ship of Magic, but like the other two a lot more, which personally I can't even fathom having that, but we'll see. The world building. Next off, we have the world building of the trilogy, which I think is a lot better than Farseer, but it's not really what I'm here for. I will be honest, a lot of the more magical aspects of this trilogy I didn't really care for because I was a lot more invested in, first of all, the character drama and the family drama, and a lot of the other more grounded aspects. It's not a very grounded trilogy anyway because there's magic boats, but um, it's the more grounded part of it. And there's sea serpent chapters throughout all three books, and I did like the sea serpent chapters more and more as the trilogy went on. But the magical aspect of the trilogy was pretty easily my least favorite part of the whole thing. I did enjoy them as it went on, um, but I didn't really love it. But the way that this expands, first of all, on what we know in Farseer, and by the way, you can read this without reading Farseer. There are like really minor spoilers, and what I wouldn't recommend is like reading the first book of Farseer and then going on into this, because by that point you will know enough about Farseer to pick up on stuff that happens in this. But you can start with this and then go back to Farseer, because then you'll probably have like you won't pick up on anything that spoils Farseer directly. There's a lot of minor little hints here and there, but really, I don't think you're gonna catch that many. If you haven't read like Assassin's Apprentice. Like if you read Assassin's Apprentice and then come to this, you will get spoiled because you're gonna pick up on a lot of things. But if you don't read like specifically Assassin's Apprentice and you just read this and then you go back to Farseer and then you start that, then you won't really get spoiled, I don't think. But yeah. Or even like again, don't read Assassin's Apprentice and then Royal Assassin and come here. If you're going to read like a couple of Farseer books before that, just finish the whole trilogy and then come here, or just read this first and then go back. I would prefer going to Farseer first and reading this because I think that's a better reading order overall. But you can definitely start here. Uh, so yeah. Uh, what else do I want to talk about here? Um, yeah. But yeah, going back to the world building of this trilogy, I think it's quite the improvement on Farseer in this aspect, because first of all, it's in a completely different part of the world than Farseer, of the realm of the elderlings. It's in a completely different part of the realm of the elderlings than Farseer, so it explores a lot of different stuff, as well as it going in Farseer is largely set in like a specific couple locations. Assassin's Quest is the one that goes into the most locations, but for the most part, like especially the first two books, uh, are in one area. But this one is like, of course, it's nautical fantasy, so there's a lot of traveling, a lot of exploration. a lot of that different stuff. So you go into a lot more different parts of the world. But specifically in this one piece of land called the Cursed Shores, uh, and that is where you will get the most stuff. But uh, and along with that, you get a lot more of the magical aspects of the series, because I think Farseer also went into a good amount of the magics, but this one goes more into the magic as like a part of the world and the ecology and a lot of different stuff and how it integrates itself into the world. Whereas Farseer, the magic was more of like an exclusive thing. So the magical aspects are more of an exclusive thing. So you will see that as you go on. And also, just like the magic in this one is pretty hard to ignore because there's talking boats, but you'll see that soon enough. I do think there's a lot of different things that this one, there's not much else I can really say about world building without spoiling this. It does reference some parts of the world in Farseer. It references the Six Duchies, which, if you don't know, is where Farseer takes place. But uh, again, it doesn't spoil it very much. So yeah, that's about all I have to say for the characters, plot, world building, and theming, and all that stuff. Um, I will say the sexual assault in this trilogy is that's a trigger warning. If you don't want to read about that, I wouldn't recommend reading this, because there is a book where it specifically goes into that very deeply, but it's present throughout the entire trilogy in one form or the other. Like it's referenced a lot throughout the trilogy, even before you get the event that really like pushes it into the deep exploration of that topic. I will say it's a very good handling of them. I've seen some disagreements here and there. I'll see. I don't know, but I think that the way she went into it, pretty well done. Um, so yeah, that's the one trigger. That's a couple trigger warnings. There's some violence. Not much. This isn't a very action-packed series. It's very slow-paced, and I like it for that. I think the slow pace really lends itself to Hobbs' writing. Um, and, and she has one of the best writing styles I've ever experienced. Um, so from here, I think we'll go into a couple of my complaints from here, and most of them come to second and third books, because Ship of Magic is a book that I basically have no problems with. And like the only reason it's not higher on my list of favorite books of all time is just because there's books I like more, and there's Robin Hobb books I like. There's one Robin Hobb book I like more, but yeah, that's about it. So most of those come through. Most of my complaints come through in the second and third books. Well, I'm not very satisfied. I mean, okay. So there are two character arcs that I was really invested in the whole way through the entire book. I mean, the entire series, and by the end of the book, like the second to last scene, the way that one of them was resolved felt kind of cheap to me, and I don't know if I want to say more, but I have talked about this to a couple of different people on a couple of discords about the second to last scene of this, and I like it a lot more now. I It still feels kind of cheap to me, but I do like thematically what it's doing. I appreciate a lot more, and for the story, what it's doing and saying, I like a lot more. In the moment reading it, it felt pretty cheap, and that kind of lowered my opinion of the arc as a whole. I do think the whole way through the entire trilogy, it's very well done. It's just like the second to last scene and the conclusion of that, I felt was somewhat cheap. Again, I hate to use that word, but if you're more insightful than me, you won't have that problem. So we'll see. And now I do like it a lot more. It's just like the immediate emotion after reading it uh, was that it I was somewhat unsatisfied. On rereading that scene, though, I did like it a lot more. So I will say that. But even after that, I would have liked a little more time, like 50 pages more, which is a lot to ask because if you can't tell, this is a thick book. About like 50 pages more of in that like with that character after this specific point and like delving into a lot of different stuff after this specific event happened. I think I would have liked it a lot more. And the other character, it's just like there's a lot of stuff that happened to him, and then we just don't really get a lot of time with him after that. So yeah. Again, I really like most of the things about the ending. Another thing about the ending that I didn't really like is just the final battle wasn't like the final action scenes weren't really that engaging to me. Um, and I won't say why, but it's kind of because of the way that it was handled. It's not because of the way it was handled. It's just like the specific kind of battle it was, and I'm not like the biggest on action scenes either. So unless it's done really well, and it might have been done really well, but the specific like setting of the action scene wasn't um wasn't my favorite. But that being said, there were multiple parts about the ending that I really liked. I did really like the ending. It's just like no, I didn't love the ending. Um, like I was somewhat satisfied with the ending. It's just like lot of different parts of it. It's just like it's not like an S tier ending the way that like a Memory of Light or Hero of Ages or something like that would be. I do think again it's a really good ending. It's just like not a great ending in my opinion. It's not like the most satisfying. So I do hope we get more of these characters because I just want more with them because again they are brilliantly written, brilliantly set up, and throughout the whole trilogy I've gone very attached to them. I suspect they're going to come back in Rain Wild Chronicles for reasons. It would be cool to see them in Tawny Manor fits into Fool. It would be really cool to see them in Tawny Manor fits into Fool. I highly doubt they are going to be in either of those, especially Tawny Man. It would be fun if they were in Fits into Fool. I don't think they are going to be, but never say never. I would really like to see them in Fits into Fool, but I just want more out of these characters, and that's like my final verdict. I want more. So there we go. Again, after that, I don't really have much more to say about the trilogy. I think it was brilliant the whole way through. My ranking of the Elderlings books that I've read so far, number one is still Assassin's Quest. Number two would be no Ship of Magic. Number three would be Royal Assassin. Number four would be Ship of Destiny. Number five would be Assassin's Apprentice, and then my least favorite book is The Matchup, even though I still really like The Matchup. Oh, another thing that I didn't like is the ending of The Matchup. That's just because it went a little bit more into the world building aspect that I wasn't as invested in, and I think that's part of the reason why. It also focused a lot on a character that a lot of people love, and I just really like, but I don't love. She's a good character. I just don't love her. And then like my favorite characters in this trilogy, number one is Althea, number two is either Kenneth or Paragon. Let's just say number two is Kenneth, number three is Paragon, number four is Winchell, number five is Ronica. So those are my favorite characters on the trilogy. That's about all I have to say. Smell you later.